What's up, Dolphin Nation? What's up, PhinsTalk Nation? I know you guys know that General Manager Chris Greer, or former General Manager Chris Greer, has been fired. And I've always said that I want Mike McDaniel out of here. But I got to give you the other side of the story. Is there a possibility that Mike McDaniel could stay as Dolphins head coach? Right now, they've won 2 in a row. They're 4-7. And if the rest of the schedule seems kind of easier, so can they go 7-7? Can they go 10-7? And can Mike McDaniel stick around even with the new GM, or can Champ Kelly and Mike McDaniel stick around? It's a very strong possibility because Tua is owed a lot of money. So there's 2 possibilities. Mike McDaniel could stick around and we can hire a new GM, or Champ Kelly and Mike McDaniel could stick around for 2026. And then blow it completely up in 2027, meaning Mike McDaniel, Champ Kelly are no longer in charge and Tua is gone. Or is Stephen Ross gonna go ahead and get a new GM and let him and Mike McDaniel rebuild this thing from the ground up, starting in 2026, and cut your losses with Tua Tagovailoa. Before I give you my other thoughts, I'm gonna go ahead and play something from Ari. I forgot his last name, but his first name's Ari. I'm gonna go ahead and play something from a conversation he had. Then I'm gonna play something from Connor Orr and Albert Breer, and then I'll give you my final thoughts of how strong of a possibility this can happen, and what I think can happen. But let me go ahead and find that video for you guys and play it for you guys. Give me 1 second. I'm only going to play a certain part of the video, so I'm fast forwarding to the part I want you guys to hear.
All right, Ari, we're on to those AFC teams already now that you've gotten the Raiders out of the way. Where else should we be looking?
Yeah, I mean, so the Dolphins are probably the next team we should talk about up here. Like we said, they already fired their GM in Chris Greer, and Mike McDaniel has been on the hot seat all year long. Probably the first person put on a hot seat this year was Mike McDaniel, dating back to that Week 1 game versus the Indianapolis Colts. The one thing that you could say about the Miami Dolphins right now is that those players have definitely not quit on him. I mean, when you look at the Dolphins play football, there's definitely been some games where it was embarrassing, but some of these recent games for them, they've been in it and they've been winning. They've now won 2 in a row over here, beating the Bills, which nobody expected 2 weeks ago, and then squeaking out that win in Madrid on Sunday versus the Commanders. So they definitely have had some impressive wins when everybody doubted them. And the remaining schedule here, they have a bye coming up, but then they have the Saints, and then they have the Jets. And these are some games where all of a sudden a team that's 4-7 can now be 6-7. And it's like, does this give the owner, Stephen Ross, some thought about, like, hey, the players are not giving up on him. He's still a really, really good offensive mind. And the biggest factor here for Mike McDaniel at the end of the year is going to be Tua. And the reason I bring up Tua is he still has over $50 million in guaranteed salary for next year. So if you're Stephen Ross and you're the Dolphins and you're Tom Garfinkel, who is somebody who's very close to Stephen Ross's ear there, you go out and ask yourself, if we fire the head coach and there's nothing to do with the quarterback, we're not going to move on from him and take on $90 million of dead money. Do you keep Mike for one more year, knowing Tua is anyways going to be here? That is something that's been brought up around the NFL. People have asked about that. The other thing about it, of course, is you still have to find a new GM. And Champ Kelly is currently the interim GM. He'll probably get an interview to become the full-time GM. But that dynamic of it is one that people in the NFL have discussed. So everyone has said this is a slam dunk. They're going to clean house. They're going to move on. I still think that's definitely a possibility. But the players have definitely not given up. They've moved on from a couple of players here. They traded away Jalen Phillips, but they're still in it and they're still winning. And that's probably the most important thing over here when it comes to all of that. So that element of it, of the fact that Tua still has so much guaranteed money and those two are so tied, I think that's going to be part of the decision over here when the season comes to an end.
I might just be a fellow short nerd that enjoys the football kind of stuff, but I I love Mike McDaniel. I don't know, maybe, I'm not there. I'm not in those rooms. I don't know how he really leads beyond what we've seen on, like the Hard Knocks types of things. But he very much seems like a guy that has a certain level of respect around the NFL, despite his unorthodoxness. You gather that's the same thing from ownership, that they have a certain way where they look at him and just say he's a little bit different. We've seen what this offense can be when it's fully functioning with a non-concussed quarterback.
Yeah.
What's the you think there really is just like a love from the ownership group that might be playing into it?
Stephen Ross has been adamant all season long that he's not moving off from him. As soon as the Chris Greer move was made, there were statements put out that Mike is finishing the year no matter what. Like, stop asking about this, stop bringing it up. And that has been the tone all year long. So even after that, there was the one embarrassing loss, a 31-6 loss to the Browns in that rain game. Everyone thought that would be it for him. They turn around the very next week and they win 34-10 over the Atlanta Falcons. So this team has never just given up on him. And that's probably the key factor when it comes to all of this. And again, speaking to agents in the executive world and the coaching world, the amount of people who have defensive-minded candidates this offseason who have told me that they would hire Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, I've heard it from a couple of people. So he is very, very well respected around the NFL. And his offenses is definitely something that other teams would definitely want to have. So Miami knows what they have. They know what they have in him. And the most important factor right now is they have not given up on him. So it's kind of crazy when you look at it. They were 2-7. They've pulled off 2 in a row. They're now 4-7. They have the Saints, the Jets, the Steelers, the Bengals coming up. I mean, these are games where they should be favored. Like, there's a world over here where they some way somehow climb themselves to a 7-7 record all of a sudden. So that's possible over here, which is crazy to say.
Ari, are you predicting a playoff run here? You're predicting a playoff push?
I didn't realize how weak the schedule is the rest of the year. I mean, it's crazy to look at when you look at this thing. So I'm not predicting a playoff
This is going to be an Ari guarantee. We're going to get an Ari guarantee in here again.
I'm not predicting a playoff run or anything like that, but if they end the year like that, I do think Mike McDaniel finds a way to survive one more year. I don't know if they do a full-blown GM search. I think they just keep it status quo and keep Champ Kelly as the GM for a year and see where that takes them. Because, again, Tua is locked in for $50+ million next year. There is no getting out of it. So if the only head coach who wanted to keep Tua when he was hired was Mike McDaniel, and there's no way of getting out of Tua, you might as well run it back for a year. So that's where it stands right now. For all I know, they might lose to the Saints and Jets, and this whole conversation is a waste of time. But as of right now, they've won 2 in a row. They're on a bye, and they come back with a very, very favorable schedule. So let's see how the year ends. But, Ben, if I would have told you back in week 3 when they were 0-3 that Mike McDaniel would be safe and potentially have his job in 2026, you would have called me crazy. But the tone right now within the circles that I talk to is Mike might be safe at the end of the year, which again is a crazy thing to say.
A little bit of a curtain peeled back. The way that Ari and I look at the news, we try to plan things out and we have an idea where things might hit. There's a lot that goes into it. We brought on former, real tight Cam Wolf, who obviously does more national coverage now for NFL Network. We brought him on because we were like, oh yeah, Mike's done after this week. We wanted to have like that preparation for it. Like, that's where our heads were thinking. And sure enough, now we're heading into week 12 and the team there's a little bit of an uptick. And
all right, guys, I do agree with the guys. Could it be that Stephen Ross is going to put an ultimatum and handcuff the new GM, or could it be that Champ Kelly will be the GM for at least 1 year? Who knows what Stephen Ross and the upper management on the Miami Dolphins is going to do, but it's a very, very key factor of the money that Tua is owed. So now we're going to listen to Orr and Breer talk about the same situation, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts, and we'll end the video there. Again, I appreciate all the support and all the comments in the videos as we continue to grow PhinsTalk by Roland McCarlos.
Dolphins, I said it last week, Albert. We didn't throw them away. There's 16. They won 16.
We looked at their schedule.
And we looked up the schedule.
Let the record show that we were the first people to actually look at their schedule and be like, holy crap, they're going to be 6-7 going into Pittsburgh in the middle of December.
This was the first podcast.
This was, yeah. The Dolphins are alive, yes.
And I want to just add this. Okay, so every year I do my coaches list, which is coming to we're wrapping it up. We're getting there. It's a big production, but I will say this. Just making some calls. I think that there is a chance that Mike McDaniel holds on to this job. And I'll tell you why. For two reasons. Okay? They like him. Dolphins like him. Mm-hmm. And if this GM search gets really competitive, okay, let's say that the Dolphins want their GM to hire their head coach, the next head coach, right? Let's say that the Dolphins don't close on the GM until January 2 or January 3. Let's say it's just a competitive search, right? And they bring in a ton of guys, and it just takes a while, right? Okay, then you're already out of the coaching carousel for that year. And even if you get there on time, if you're a GM, what are you looking for in this search? And you could say whatever. But what is every team really looking for? A guy who can turn around a quarterback, call plays on offense, and be that steady offensive presence who's always going to kind of evolve with the game. Mike already is that. And if he gets fired, Albert, I guarantee you he's going to interview for at least one head coaching job and will be the top offensive coordinator candidate at every opening around the league. So if you're the new GM, it's like, well, why am I firing this guy? You know
I mean, it's easy for me to see a scenario where, like, let's say Robert Saleh becomes the head coach in Tennessee, and now all of a sudden Mike McDaniel's working with Cam Ward. You know what I mean? Like, something like that's definitely on the table. And I think, to his credit, like, so Stephen Ross, who, I think has got a checkered record as owner for sure. He's still looking for his first playoff win as owner, and he's had the team since 2007. But I think one thing that my understanding is that he had heard from enough people what a great second chance head coach Mike McDaniel would become, that I think he sort of stopped and was like, maybe I shouldn't pull the plug on his first chance so quick. If all these people think that this guy is going to be great in his second try, well, can we get him there? And it made me recall Marvin Lewis. And just bear with me here, and I know we're trying to get through these games quick, but just bear with me on this one. So I had a conversation with Marvin Lewis where he went through the thing with Carson Palmer in 2010, right?
Yeah.
And he basically had enough self-awareness to realize he was like, he'd been the head coach in Cincinnati for 8 years. And he had enough self-awareness to realize, well, 99% of guys in my spot right now would be getting fired. I'm lucky to hang on to this job. So you always hear about people going and learning from being fired. Why don't I just evaluate myself now as it is? You know what I mean? And treat this as if I'd been fired. And he revamped a bunch of stuff and brought in Jay Gruden to be his offensive coordinator. And obviously there's a separation from Palmer, which nobody wanted, but then they wind up going and getting Andy Dalton, and then he makes the playoffs 5 years in a row,
Right.
And so, I like the idea that Mike McDaniel could be a great second chance head coach. Well, wait a minute. If I'm Steve Ross, I can understand where Steve Ross would look at that and say, maybe we ought to give him a better chance his first time around.
Yeah.
And so if I'm Ross and I keep him, I'm telling you, go call Marvin Lewis and have that conversation with him and really analyze where you're at as a head coach. We want to make it work here, but go through the process of a guy who's been fired and see where you're at. And, I think if he does that, you could wind up with holy crap, this really worked out, and if Steve Ross wants that, let me ask you this, Connor. They start interviewing GM candidates, right? Do you think that they would have a bias towards guys who would say, I want to keep Mike?
Well, and this is what happened with the one of the first GM searches I covered with the Jets and John Idzik, right? And all the coaches or all the GMs that came in there, it was we felt like Woody Johnson wanted to keep Rex Ryan. And so you tell him that, I'm going to keep Rex Ryan. Now, I think I hope Stephen Ross is smarter than that. It's hey, it's up to you. We just have no problem with this guy. Do you think you can make it work? And if I'm a GM, though, politically, it's just smart. Because what does this option give you as a GM? It gives you a 1-year scot-free reset button where let's just say you go 7-10 again next year with McDaniel, and then the GM can be like, okay, clearly it's the coach's problem. And then you fire the coach, and then you start over again, and you probably get a year added to your contract because you want them to be in sync with the other coach, right? And so it's not a bad procedural move, like politically. I don't know. I don't see the problem. That's why I think it's just a long way of saying don't count out Mike McDaniel yet in Miami.
I think like there are a couple guys that are important too. The president, Tom Garfinkel, and then Brandon Shore, who's their cap chief. I think he's going to have like a role in all of this too. And I know people haven't heard that name, but I think it's an important name. I think he could wind up being like what Kevin Demoff was in LA, and now Tony Pastores is there. What Mike Disner has been in Detroit. These names may not mean anything to people, but they're guys who kind of were stabilizing forces in their organizations. And Brandon Shore is just a name to watch. Is somebody who, like, when they reimagine the whole structure of things, maybe it's a three-headed thing, where you've got a general manager who's sort of focused on scouting the way Les Snead is in LA, or John Lynch is in San Francisco with Parag Marathe there, or Brad Holmes is in Detroit. You have that guy focusing on scouting, and then you have, almost like the second arm of the GM, with the cap chief. Like, I think there's going to be a reimagination of things that way too.
Agreed with what Connor Warren and Albert Breer had to say, and the good and the bad as to why Mike McDaniel could stay in Miami. But if you're going to hire a new GM, don't handcuff him to say you have to stay with Mike McDaniel. Let the GM decide, okay, I'm going to give Mike McDaniel, since you like him a lot, I'm going to give Mike McDaniel another year, and I'll evaluate him after 2026. And if he does a good enough job, we might just get rid of Tua and go with another quarterback and rebuild this team and give Mike McDaniel 3 or 4 more years. That's a good idea. We'll see what happens, guys. Leave me your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think Mike McDaniel's gone, even if we hire a new GM, or do you think Jeff Kelly and Mike McDaniel will be the combination for 2026? Like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and go Dolphins.